Good morning. Yeah, that's better, isn't it? Hey, does that get you fired up? I mean, if it doesn't, we need to check your pulse because something's wrong. Have you ever heard or been somewhere where you're reading and you get this quote and you're like, I'm not sure who you said that? One of my favorite, all-time favorites is this: the internet, now that's going to change the world. Abraham Lincoln. Or how about this one? You miss 100% of the shots you never take. Michael Scott. No Office fans, terrible. I think it was Wayne Gretzky who actually said it, but maybe Michael Jordan said it. I'm not sure. Maybe you said it. But we've just heard these things that someone supposedly said, and it's not really what they said, and it's not even the person who actually said what was said. And so in this series, we're just looking at things that Jesus never said. Never. And one of those things, for sure, for all of us to realize and to understand, is that Jesus never once said, follow your heart. How many people have heard that before? Just follow your heart. Just follow your heart. My grandmother used to say it to me, just follow your heart, baby. No, that's a terrible idea. I need to ask you a question this morning. Can I ask you a question? It's personal. Can I ask it? Okay. Have you ever had your heart broken? I don't mean, your favorite team lost. My heart doesn't break very often because my team is Alabama and we normally win. If you're a Panthers fan, I get it, your heart probably breaks, right? Although I'm a Panthers fan, I'm not like Pastor Clay. I love Bryce Young. I pray for him every week because he's going to get killed. But no, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about heart shattered. Maybe to the point where you think there's no way my heart will ever beat again. That happened to me when I was a kid. I was about 5 or 6 years old. I remember it as vividly as the day it happened. It was raining. It was very hard to see. And I had just gotten a new puppy, and his name was Scooby. I was a Scooby-Doo fan. And little Scooby, he was awesome. I loved him. He was great. Supposed to be, in his little yard kennel, but it was raining very hard, and we're going in the driveway, and this was back before we had seats and stuff. Like, I didn't grow up in a safe world. I stood up with my, on the dash everywhere we went. And I remember hearing like this sound, this gut-wrenching sound. And when I got out of the car, my mom had run over Scooby, and my heart shattered. It was broken into 1,000,000 pieces. Now, my next dog came very quickly, and her name was Daphne. You see the pattern. So my heart didn't stay broken very long. But for some of us, our heart is broken here today. And it could have gotten broken years and years and years ago. And we're still dealing with a broken heart right now. And so let me ask you this question. This is just a simple question for you to reflect on over these next hour or two as we go through these passages. Do you follow something that is fragmented and scattered? Is that something that you want to base your direction in life on? So if Jesus never said, follow your heart, well, what did he say? How did Jesus view the human heart? Oftentimes we dive into these things and we go, well, I don't know. I'm going to try and figure this out. I don't know about you, but I would like to go to the person who actually created the human heart and see what he has to say, right? And so he created the human heart. He knows it. He knows it very well, inside and out. But also, when we're reading the Bible and we come across these concepts, we need to understand, what did Jesus think about the human heart? And then we need to understand that Jesus didn't have the New Testament. He didn't have Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. He didn't have any of that. So his whole understanding as a human being, fully God, fully man, his whole understanding was how it appeared in the Old Testament, how he was taught as a kid growing up. And so it's smart of us, it's wise of us to look at that. Now, I want to teach you guys this amazing concept today. It's super, super easy, but it sounds crazy academic. It's not. Right? I'm not smart enough to come up with stuff like this. So, I'm going to teach you something called the law of first occurrence. Can we say that together? the law of first occurrence. Now, that is a concept that if you take a word or a concept or a phrase in the Bible and you go back to the very first place that it ever appears and read the meaning there and then follow the thread of that all the way through the end of the Bible. Because the way this is understood is that the very first time a word ever appears in history is its most pure meaning. That's where you get what it's actually built on. Does anyone have a clue the very first time that the word heart appears in the Bible? Okay, I'm going to give it to you. You don't have to guess it. It's in Genesis 6, verse 6. And you know what it says? It broke his heart. You know who the his is? God. If you don't know much about Genesis, it's wild. You should go read it sometime. Like, this is a killer story. Netflix can't even make a special that's as good as this stuff. So there's this spirit world that God created, full of these spirit beings called Elohims. And then he created mankind on the earth, and it's super cool. So there are these two realms, the spirit realm and the tangible realm. The spirit realm had rebelled against God. It already happened. They're like, nah, I don't like the way you want me to act and live, and I want to do my own thing. And then, of course, we kind of know the story that humans decided to do that as well. And so in Genesis chapter 6, the two worlds kind of collide when the spirit world tries to take over the human world. And it broke God's heart. His heart was shattered because that which he created to be like himself chose to follow their own heart. That's the very first time we see the word heart in the Bible. And so in its purest meaning, in its purest form, you don't want to follow a broken heart. But wait, that's God's heart. Yeah, isn't that crazy? That God himself says, hey, you broke my heart. But isn't it amazing that God also is the one who gives us a new heart? He understands the concept. Not that his heart's broken and can never be... No. Not like ours. But just imagine how in Hebrews, where it talks about Jesus has felt everything we felt. Can you imagine when his friends left him on the night that he died, how that broke his heart? Can you imagine how when this rich young, what they called a ruler, this rich young prince comes to him and says, hey, how can I have eternal life? I've done all these things and I'm doing good things. And he goes, just sell your stuff and follow me. And it says that he goes away sad. So heart's breaking. Now, to go along with this first causation. So the word heart, or some form of it, occurs in the Bible over 1,000 times. Whether it's in a phrase or it's a different word. But what's interesting, and this is where the academic stuff comes in, but you need to know this. Notice, in the Old Testament, there are 21 different ways to define, look at, and understand the heart. But after Jesus comes, there's only 9. You see that? Like Jesus redefines, when he says, I've come to give you life to the fullest, when he says, I make a new covenant with you tonight, he redefines how our hearts can function. You know what the problem is? We follow our own heart, not the heart that Jesus gives us. That's the end of the sermon at the beginning. So if you've got an appointment, go ahead. So here are the words, right? The most commonly used word in the Old Testament is a word that we pronounce lev, or leb. And it simply means what it means. It's the center of all humanity. We think of the heart as this muscle or this organ that pumps blood, right? And if yours didn't flutter a minute ago when people were, coming up out of that water, right, something's wrong. But they didn't view it as a feeling. The Israelite people view everything, your wisdom, all the things of the human experience, they emanate from the heart. Now, when you go into the New Testament, it's this Greek word, cardia. Does that sound familiar? Cardio. That's where we get that word, right? And it has a different meaning. It actually begins to mean the feeling part. It's what we've come to experience and understand as what the heart is about. And so last week when Pastor Clay began this series and we talked about forgiveness, I don't know about you, but I was sitting like right over here on the very back, right? because I knew what the sermon was about, and the closer you are, the more convicted you are. You know what I'm getting at? And I'm listening to this sermon about forgiveness, and I'm like, it's getting hot in here. I don't like this, right? Because my human heart says, don't forgive them. You know what they did to you. And what I forget is that when I don't forgive, it hurts my heart, not theirs. It hinders my heart, not who I'm mad at or who done me dirty. It doesn't work that way. And so, what did Jesus say? The very first time that heart occurs in the New Testament, right? So we're doing this law of first occurrence, is when one of the most famous sermons ever. It's the Sermon on the Mount. And look what Jesus says. He says, God blesses those whose hearts are pure, for they will see God. Can I just ask you simply, how many people do you know that you know for a fact have a pure heart? Is the list short? Yeah. I would say there's a few people that I really think their hearts are pure. There's many people, but in my life, there's a few people that I know that when they say something to me, when they want something for me, their heart is pure in that. But what Jesus is saying is that you can take those 21 ways of looking at the human heart, and every one of them probably are going to lead you to heartbrokenness. When left to your own accord, your heart is going to be broken all the time, yet you continue to try to follow it. And so Jesus begins to flip the script on the human experience because, number one, God became man. That's crazy to me. And he says, this is how you can actually live. No, I know you've heard it said, but I say. I know this is the way you've thought about it before, but I want you to think about it differently now. By the way, that's called repentance. Nobody likes that word. I don't like that word. It's crazy. But that's what it means, is that you literally think differently about stuff. And so when I think about my heart, I don't follow my heart. Because if I followed my heart, I would have bought another pair of Jordans this week. There was a fresh pair that dropped. I really wanted them. My heart longed for them. My wife threatened my life. You've got too much in the closet already. But see, our hearts, they're so fickle. Our emotions, they're real. You never discount them, but they're so fickle. You can't trust them all the time. But what Jesus begins to lay out is this plan that he says will heal your heart. And by the way, even with a healed heart by Jesus, I'd still be careful trusting it because we're still human. We still make mistakes. We're always going to just kind of do the wrong thing at certain times. And so Jesus says hearts are pure. How do you get a pure heart? Well, first of all, Jesus has got to give you one. Jesus' understanding of the heart was shaped by the Old Testament, and he remembers that it says, the heart is deceitful and wicked. Who can know its way? Jesus also knew that the prophet said, I'll take your heart of stone and I'll give you a heart of flesh. So Jesus knew something about this whole heart transplant thing. I remember my dad was in the hospital. He had a total nephrectomy. If you don't know what that is, that's the scientific or doctor term for taking a kidney out. And so the procedure went good, and he's in recovery that night, and we're hanging out, and we're laughing, and we're cutting up, we're watching football, and all things. He goes, hey, can you help me go to the restroom? Oh, absolutely, Dad, let's go. So I get him up to go to the restroom. Dude goes completely ash gray and falls. He had a heart attack. His LAD, which is also called the Widowmaker, 100% blocked. I hit the button, nurse comes in, nitroglycerin, resuscitates, brings my dad back to life. I can't trust that heart. It'd go anytime, especially with my dietary options. You know what I mean? You fry it, I'll eat it. But I'm not talking about a doctor going in and putting a stent. No. Jesus is the kind of surgeon that goes in and gives you a completely new heart. It longs for different things. It passions for different things. And those things begin to revolve around who he is, not the world that we live in, this tangible expression. As a matter of fact, Jesus goes on in this same sermon, and look what he says. Wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will also be. A friend of mine says it like this: whatever you think about most is what you worship. Whatever you think about most is what you worship. So, is it my shoes? Is it a team? Is it a particular kind of lifestyle or car? I don't know. Only you can answer the question of what your heart is beating for today. But what Jesus says is, when your heart beats for me, that's a good heart. You're going to be okay. Or you're going to make mistakes, yeah. You're still going to get a broken heart. It's unavoidable in a broken world. But Jesus says, this is where the treasure will be found. You'll actually find life to its fullest when I give you a new heart. So Jesus knows our heart, right? We said that earlier. We know that Jesus understands not only the anatomy of our heart, he understands everything about how our heart functions in this world. And so for me, when I think about Jesus never saying, follow your heart, I have to understand that Jesus speaks about the orientation of my heart, the posture, if you will. Like, what is your heart posturing toward? Is it humility? Is it service? Is it faithfulness? Is it gratitude? Is it generosity? Is it gentleness? Those are all things that the New Testament would go on to define as a very good checkup for your heart. That when these fruit of the Spirit begin to be shown and known in your life, when people look at you and go, man, there's something different about them. They're not nearly as angry about traffic as I am. Which, by the way, traffic here, I've lived here 3 weeks now. Can I tell you, I've had to pray a lot. A lot of prayers. Those little windy things. What? I don't care what you call them. They're terrible. They need to roundabout get out of here. But you get what I'm saying. But when my heart begins to say, not bless your heart, I know what that means. Yeah. I lived in the north for a while. They don't know what that means. So I'd use it a lot. Bless your heart. But we know what it means. So Jesus isn't necessarily concerned about the actions of your heart because he knows that you're going to take actions that break his. You're going to. Because you're human. And he's the only perfect human that I've known to walk the face of the earth after Adam and Eve. And so he says, listen, what is your motive? What motivates you to say and do the things that you do? For instance, when we talk about a checkup, meaning we have to have some measurement of how our heart is doing. Do you even know if your heart's broken right now? I'm really good friends with a trauma expert. And it's interesting, she suggested a book to me called The Body Keeps Score. And did you know that biologically, when you experience some kind of trauma, something that shatters your heart, okay? I'm not talking about your team loses your life is shattered from the inside out. That even when you are better, that over time your body will go back to the moment that happened and you'll experience some of the same physical ailments as the moment it happened. And so we have to be careful what we measure it by. I don't know about you, but I've never gone into the doctor and been healthier when I walked out. I feel great when I go in there, and then all of a sudden I've got high cholesterol. Right? I didn't have it before that. It was fine. But they have these measurements, right? They have these standards. And see, we have a standard about how our heart should operate in Jesus. And here is just kind of some of those. First thing first, ask God to examine your heart. Now, I think this is important for us to understand. There are many times I don't like going to this. I don't like this thing this morning. It doesn't like me. I don't like going to this because I don't like what it tells me not to do. I don't go to this also because I don't like what it tells me to do. Sometimes I don't like what it says about me because when I read it, it's kind of a mirror. And I'd love to be more like Jesus each day, but I'm really more like Peter. Some days I'm more like Judas. And so I don't like it. And I'm convinced that many of us will shy away from asking God to examine our heart because we don't want to know the results. It's why we don't go to the doctor. I'm not sick until I walk out of there. Man, I didn't feel anything until I read the word this morning. I'm like, oh, I got to change that. I didn't realize that. But it's true. And so ask God to examine your heart. This is in Psalm 139. Search me, O God. Know my heart. Test me. Know my anxious thoughts. Point out anything in me that offends you. Do you ever wake up and just go, hey, God, did I do anything to offend you yesterday? Yes, okay, thank you. I knew it was rhetorical. But there's something about trusting God to do the examination. Because it's His definition of the heart that we're shooting for, not ours. Not our culture's. Not something that somebody said online. But what did God say about it? So our first step is to get a checkup, and we ask the person who made our heart to tell us how our heart is doing. The second one, trust Jesus with your heart. Once your heart is broken, it's very difficult to trust, isn't it? By the way, has your heart ever been broken by someone you didn't know? Have you ever been hurt by a total, complete stranger that you've never met before? Or do you go with this phrase, this quote, if you will? It seems like the people you love the most hurt you the most. You know those are correlatory, right? No one can hurt you if they don't care about them. And so I love when you trust Jesus with your heart. Look what He says. Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens. I will give you rest. Anybody need rest right now? Anybody feel like you're spinning 1,000 plates and at any moment you can drop them all? Does anybody feel like trying to be better and good is exhausting? Jesus says, hey, give me your heart. Now notice He doesn't say, hey, you know what? I tell you what, every time your heart breaks, I'm going to put it back together again. It's not what He says. He says, when your heart breaks, bring it to me, and I'll give you rest. Because when you get sick, or when you have a heart attack, or when you have surgery, what do they tell you to do? Rest. It's how you recover. And Jesus says there's rest in Him at any moment of any day that you trust Him with your heart. And look what He says about His own heart. Let me teach you because I am humble and gentle at heart. So see, the first time we see a picture of the heart of God, it's broken. And then when God is on earth, He says, my heart is humble and gentle. I'll give you my heart instead. You need my heart. You don't need your heart. Finally, trust others with your heart. This one's hard, isn't it? This is kind of confession, public confession time. People are really hurtful. As a matter of fact, I've been deeply wounded by people. So have you. And so what do? We build walls. We don't put ourselves out there. We don't go all in. We may give a little bit of our heart, but we don't give our whole heart over to somebody. Why? Because we are protecting it. And can I tell you what? We are terrible at protecting our own hearts. The Scriptures command us to. Guard your heart, for from it flows the entirety of life. That's just one verse. You're like, there's got to be more than that. Nope, that's what it says. But trusting others with your heart, this is where the rubber meets the road. This is when you know that you trust Jesus with your heart. Because even if you trust it to another human being and they fail you, and they will, Jesus doesn't. But look what Jesus says through the Apostle Paul. Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, let's stop. You are dearly loved. Some of you just need that today. Your heart just needs to know that no matter where you've been, no matter what you've done, no matter where you're coming from this morning, you are dearly loved. And there's absolutely nothing you can do today that will make God love you any more than He already does. And there is absolutely nothing you can do today that will make Him love you any less. Okay, let's move on. Clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Bear with each other and forgive one another. The only way that you're going to be able to trust your heart to other people is to know it's going to get broken. Whether it's your spouse, whether it's your kids, whether it's your neighbor, whether it's your buddy, whatever, they're going to make a mistake. They're going to break your heart in some way. But when Jesus is the one that you've entrusted your heart to, then even when humanity breaks your heart, Jesus heals your heart. It doesn't mean you don't re-engage the humanity that we live in. There are over 104 verses in the New Testament that talk something about the one another's. You cannot have a healthy heart alone in this world. It's impossible. Number one, because your own heart will deceive you and you'll think you're doing better than you are. Number two, there's no way for you, unless you're a heart surgeon, I guess, but I've never seen a heart surgeon do open heart surgery on himself. Well, that'd be kind of cool, I think, but... So you need others. And when the scriptures begin to talk about forgiving and bearing one another, forgiving as God forgave you, those are all ways in which we engage the process of getting our heart back to healthy. So, can I just ask you, how's your heart? How's your heart? Did you follow it in here today? It's awesome. That's really cool. Are you going to follow it this week in all the decisions that you make? Okay. But what I'm trying to say is this, is that I don't trust my own heart. I don't trust me. But I trust Jesus with everything. He's good. He's not waiting to zap me every time I make a mistake. He's not asking me to be perfect in everything I say and do. All He says is, trust me with your heart. Let me give you a heart of flesh that beats for a purpose that transcends everything that you know to be true in this world, including other humans breaking your heart. And so I have a simple invitation for us. The band's going to come up and play. Pastor Clay will come up and kind of end our time together in a few moments. But I just want you to bow your heads, close your eyes for just a second, if you will. If that's not your thing, cool. Ask God to examine your heart right now. Something simple. Jesus, can you just tell me what's in here that I don't know is there? What artery is clogged and I have no idea? What part of me doesn't beat for you? Simple questions. Jesus, help me to trust my heart to you more often than I do. I don't need you just for the big decisions. I need you in every breath. And then finally, Jesus, help me to forgive those who've broken my heart. Because the longer that I don't forgive, it hurts my heart, not theirs. So teach us, Jesus, in these moments, throughout the minutes and the hours and the days and the months and the years, as the human heart, we just continue to go and we push forward. I'll deal with that later. No, I'll do that some other time. I don't have time for that right now. Or that we would slow down and rest in you, knowing that you know our heart intimately. You love us. Take our hearts that have been hardened by this world, that have been broken by this world, and give us a new heart of flesh that beats with passion and kindness, that is oriented or postured towards you and your kingdom, because that's where the treasure is. You're our greatest treasure. because you give us a life that we can never live on our own. And so thank you this morning, Jesus, that you speak to us through your word, through your people, through worship, through giving, through prayer. And I pray that as we live life this week, that we would honor you with our hearts, not just our lips, not just our thoughts, not just our hands and feet, but our entire beings. In Jesus' name.